Hello and welcome back to Warcraft Daily for today the 10th of April 2014. So in today's news we have a few decent enough things. First of all, there's some news about dungeons, which is quite nice. Then I'll talk a little bit about Blizzard's appearance at PAX, one tweet from Celestalon, and then I'll finish it off with a few Q&A questions. There's perhaps not a great deal of kind of like crazy new data mine stuff in the minute. It seems like they've basically got everything they can out of this data mined alpha build, so we're just going to need to wait until things roll out a little bit more, until the Warlords of Draenor news starts to kind of strike up a pace again. Now, I am going to be doing class change videos. I've got one going for the Warrior. I think that may be today or tomorrow, I'm not sure. And I am going to do class videos for classes that I haven't played, but in those I'll just basically, it'll be a little bit more short and informational, because obviously I can't put as much of a personal touch on them, but still people seem to want those. And I am trying to play more classes. I'm actually leveling up a mage at the minute, so I have a better understanding of that. Anyway, so let's jump into the actual news, and first of all, for dungeons. Watcher said on Twitter that there are actually going to be 8 dungeons on launch, with one of those being the revamped Upper Blackrock Spire. Now, some of these are leveling dungeons, and some of them are max level normals. However, they are all level 100 heroics. Now, that actually goes against some data mine information, which is obviously another reminder that, yeah, data mining isn't always 100% right. Not everything's in the game files at the minute, as it would seem. We had data mined 6, including Upper Blackrock Spire, so that's an additional 2. And those additional 2 dungeons are in fact new ones, so that's definitely a very good thing in my opinion. 6 would not have been enough at all. So, yeah, that's pretty good. I'm just going to look here and see how many Mists of Pandaria had. Yeah, Mists only had 6 new dungeons, I believe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, Mists only had 6 new dungeons, so at least this time we're getting 7 new dungeons, and then 1 remade one. Though I think that perhaps they might add more dungeons over time, because they have expressed more of an interest in doing that, as the team's been growing in size and that kind of thing. So hopefully that happens, honestly, because while 7 is okay, we're going to get bored of those 7 within, I'd say, maybe 3 or 4 months. So maybe if they add more, just find some way to bring the difficulty up, or, I don't know, some kind of tweaking around to make it work a little bit better. Then another thing I noticed as well, just something to mention, because it's sort of related to the topic, is that they're actually making some places, like, I think it was Wailing Caverns and Razorfen Crawl, I believe that's them, but they're actually making scenarios out of them. Hopefully the original dungeon will still be there, but apparently they're making scenarios out of them, which I guess is kind of cool for some of those dungeons. Still, though, I don't want them to actually remove the full-on dungeon, because that's just a bit of the game they can leave there and not touch, and it will do just fine by itself. So there's that. Now, with that covered, let's move on to PAX. So PAX is actually starting tomorrow, on Friday, and it'll last until Sunday, and Blizzard are going to have a little bit of a presence there. In terms of World of Warcraft, there's going to be a playable demo of Warlords of Draenor, which will probably be similar to the BlizzCon build, with some updated models, and then the intro questline experience. So that's kind of cool. I don't think that it's the actual intro to Warlords of Draenor itself. I think it's the faction-specific intro, so either Frostfire Ridge or Shadowmoon Valley. So that's definitely pretty cool. Then a bunch of developers are coming. Let's see, Brian Holinka's going, so he's the main PvP guy. Bashiok's going, and I'm guessing some PvE people are going there as well. Likely we'll get a few interviews and that kind of thing. It doesn't seem like they have any panels or anything like that, which is sort of unfortunate. But, yeah, maybe they'll use this as an opportunity to do some sort of announcement or launch. I'm guessing, well, obviously, I suppose the alpha probably won't come out when major elements of their team are away, especially the community management team. So I'm guessing alpha is sometime next week. I mean actual access to the alpha, at least for press people. So we'll see how that all goes. And then just for completeness, I'll talk about their other franchises. So for Heroes of the Storm, it's going to be playable with a few new heroes. Then a whole bunch of their staff are going to be there. They'll be doing a show match, then some reveals and a Q&A. This is all fair enough, and that'll be streamed over Twitch. Then they also have a PAX pack, which includes a t-shirt, a lanyard, and one of those Funko Pop thingy-majiggers, and a poster as well. And you can sign up to something to win one. I'm not particularly sure where that is. And yeah, so that's really the situation for that. In terms of Diablo, there are going to be playable versions of the PS4 Reaper of Souls port, which is called the Ultimate Evil Edition. I think that's pretty cool. I'm actually kind of keen to try out Diablo on consoles, because from what I hear, it actually feels and plays fairly differently to what the PC one does. That's kind of cool, actually. I guess maybe you could get a little bit more kind of visceral with the controller, and perhaps it would feel a little bit more twin-stick shooterish. Anyway, it's interesting enough. And then for Hearthstone, they said that they're going to have some sort of open tournament thingamajig that's streamed over Twitch. Then you'll be able to test it on iPads. And finally, there's something where there's like, you can go to the booth and get a Hearthstone pin. So that's apparently a thing. And that's essentially the news in terms of PAX East. Overall, it should be fun enough. I'm not particularly sure if we'll get anything giant in terms of announcements, though do remember that we actually had a full-on announcement about Hearthstone in last year's PAX East. So who knows how that could all pan out, honestly. Hopefully we get something. Maybe they could just, I don't know, announce one of the new Warlords of Draenor dungeons, as an example. That would give us something to talk about. So, yeah, there's that. Now, let's move on to a tweet from Celestalon. He said that Gladiator stance tanks are actually not going to be tanks. Just in case you're not aware, Gladiator stance is one element of one of the Protection Warrior level 100 talent choices. Basically, it's a stance that you can swap into. Well, I think you can either, like, switch in or out of it. You can't do that inside combat. So, if you go into combat with Gladiator stance on, then you are committed to that choice and you cannot move out. And I think the same goes if you just go into combat with regular defensive stance. You can't switch into Gladiator, because obviously that would be extremely overpowered in things like PvP and stuff like that. But it's interesting though, Gladiator stance tanks are actually going to be on par with regular DPS based on what he said. It's very interesting, actually. This talent is basically a full, reinterpretation of the spec. It's going to play differently with a different rotation, and it will just be a unique way of doing DPS as a warrior. What interests me, though, is what kind of gear will you need? This information's probably out there somewhere, but will you actually need PvP, or not PvP, sorry, DPS gear to do well as a Gladiator tank? I'm not particularly sure. Will it just have some way of converting your tank gear? In terms of itemization, though, of just gear acquisition, I suppose, it would be extremely convenient if you could just have this stance, which meant that your tanking gear also works as damaging gear. So yeah, that's definitely one to look up. Though when I think about it, it would make sense the DPS gear would do more damage, because there doesn't seem to be anything specifically in the text for Gladiator stance that actually says it's going to convert some sort of prot-specific thing. And what it does do is that it converts Shield Slam to consume Shield Barrier as additional damage, but you'll have that anyway, and I'm not particularly sure if that's got anything to do with your prot gear. Then it will also have an increased chance to crit if you, based on your critical block chance. Once again, though, I think that could still work in prot gear, but it's mainly going to work in DPS gear, so perhaps you will need different gear. The one thing also is that they are planning on increasing tank damage a little bit across the board to make up for the fact that Vengeance is being removed. So with that 20% damage increase that Extreme Measures Gladiator stance gives, could be enough. It's it's just hard to say, honestly. It's just hard to say how this is going to pan out. We don't have the information, but hopefully at some point they will release some sort of blog about Warriors, and then we'll find out. Alright, so that's basically it in terms of news. Hopefully some stuff happens, like soon, maybe a new model, that would be very nice, though they have really been rolling out the models very fast at the minute. So that would be pretty cool. One thing that I think they need to do soon is a Night Elf model, actually, especially the Night Elf female. That got data mined, but the thing that was data mined was actually a few months old and had been completely scrapped since. So just to clear up the misconceptions there, because a lot of people are just assuming that this really kind of shitty data mined Night Elf is the actual model, when it isn't. So yeah, that's the thing. Right, let's move on to a few little Q&A things. First of all, for the Q&A, I may have a need to bring this series back. Usually my regular kind of schedule goes on hiatus when there's a big news period like this, but if things are a little bit slower time to time, then I'll just throw in a Q&A. If you do have any questions, leave them down in the comments for this video, because I'm basically completely out of them. So Yeah, let's just cover these. First of all, there's a question from Kyle T, who said, will they update any of the hideously outdated armors from the original World of Warcraft? That's a very good question. I don't believe so, and just because of time constraints, I don't think they'll really want to go back and try to fix all that. It will be very interesting to see, though, like, how will that armor look on a new model? I'm not too sure if that'll be, like, really jarring or anything like that, so definitely good to know. Well, we'll only see that. Actually, you know what? I should be able to see that soon enough, if I do get into the alpha, so I'll let you know when I see it. That's definitely a big issue, though. And in terms of leveling up, well, I guess they could just, like every 10 levels or whatever, have a different set of gear that could be quite simple, but just one that's like pretty decent, or maybe they could just take a few pre-existing leveling sets and spruce them up a little bit. Like, those sets aren't massively complicated in terms of the number of polygons or anything like that. So just, like, slapping on a high-res texture, maybe a few more sort of polygons to smooth out the model, perhaps that could work. Maybe it wouldn't be just a really resource-intensive thing. So I think that if they can do that, they absolutely should, but of course, all eyes ahead when it comes to actually just releasing an expansion. I think that's where we want all their efforts to be. Still, look, good question, and I will let you know once I get into the alpha, if I get into the alpha, because who the hell knows? Okay, so next there's a question from Stephen Peterson, who said, will all of the weapons in Warlords of Draenor be available to both factions? Now, this was just in response to that video where I showed off some of the, leveling weapon models. So what I'd say is that some of those are definitely quest rewards that could be limited to one faction. Because I guess you'd be getting Frostwolf-style weapons from the Frostwolf quests, and then Draenei-styled ones from the Draenei quests in Shadowmoon Valley. But I think that still in terms of just green drops across the board, and then neutral quests, if there are any, I'm sure you'll be able to get access to those weapons if you want them. Though, a bit of a question actually, this is just something that I pure do not know. Leveling up in Outland, were you able to get some of those Draenei-style weapons as a Horde player? I just think that would be kind of interesting to know, but still, I'd imagine you will be able to get some of those crystalline-looking weapons as an orc. Okay, so next there's a question from Christian Lee, who said, do you think that Pandaren will ever become druids? Good question. I don't, personally, I don't really see much of a lore reason why they couldn't. They just need to get hooked up with all that via the Night Elves, I suppose. They're into their nature and their peace and all that stuff, so sure. And they also seem to like their animals. It doesn't kind of cry out to me as being ridiculous, honestly. Some people have said that because they're more of an anamorphic race, that perhaps that's why they should be druids. I don't really think that holds up, because they are still as unique a humanoid race as, say, humans are, just because they kind of resemble they are panda bears, but that's just one of those things, as far as the game rules and the game lore is concerned, they're just another humanoid race. So I think they probably should be able to become druids, I guess. If anyone does know a lore reason why they can't, then do let me know, I guess. Okay, so next was a question from Cutler MCG, who said, who is winning the current war, the Horde or the Alliance? Well, in the current timeline, right now the Alliance would steamroll the Horde absurdly well. Yeah, basically, Kalimdor is wrecked for the Horde. They've lost a lot of people. All the kind of core Kron technologies being basically destroyed or confiscated by various things. So, yeah, their capital city was, at least for a time, kind of occupied. Post the throne room scene at the end of 5.4, the Alliance could steamroll the Horde and Kalimdor extremely easily. Yeah, but then the problem would be actually the Eastern Kingdoms, because Lorthamar and Sylvanas didn't really commit a great deal of forces to the entire affair, meaning that they're still going to be able to put up a pretty staunch fight. And Sylvanas actually does have the new Blight, I believe. I don't know if she's planning on using it, but it's chilling out there. So the undead would be the giant problem. Though I think that between all the different Alliance races, and then of course they have Dalaran, which is a unique tactical advantage that the Horde don't have. The Alliance literally have a flying city. They were planning on Dalaran playing a part in the Siege of Orgrimmar, but for technical reasons they didn't. But from a lore perspective, Dalaran was able to fly over Orgrimmar and start raining down hell on them. I think the Alliance would win, honestly. There's no real contest. Even with the Blood Elf magic, there are not a great deal of Blood Elves, and yeah, there's still there's so many. Yeah, look, I think they would probably, the Horde would be steamrolled. Though at the very start of the Mists of Pandaria expansion, it would probably be a far more kind of equal fight, more of a stalemate, honestly. Because back then the Horde were at least a little bit more united than they were now, and sort of willing to go a bit further. But of course that's not the case, because they were defeated. So yeah, that's basically the deal with that, and that's really it for the video. Be sure to leave any questions you may have in the comments, so I can do them on like a future Q&A episode. And yeah, that's basically it for me. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.